The first sign was the measuring tape. It was stretched across my dining room table on a Tuesday afternoon in March while my daughter Olivia leaned over it with a yellow legal pad and a calculator. I stood in the kitchen doorway holding a bag of groceries and watched her writing numbers beside little squares she had drawn by hand. "What are you measuring?" I asked. She looked up too quickly. "Oh. Nothing important, Mom. Nothing important." People only answered that quickly when the thing was very important. I set the groceries on the counter slowly. My grandson Noah sat on the living room rug playing with plastic dinosaurs. The television was on low volume. Outside, rain tapped gently against the windows of the house my husband Robert and I had bought in 1982. Olivia erased something on the paper. Then she folded the page over. That was when I knew. Not what exactly. But I knew something had already begun without me. "Olivia," I said carefully, "what are you measuring?" She sighed dramatically the way exhausted people do when they want credit for being inconvenienced. "The upstairs bedrooms." "For what?" She exchanged a glance with her husband Daniel, who was standing by the refrigerator pretending to read something on his phone. And suddenly the entire kitchen felt rehearsed. "We were just talking," Olivia said slowly, "about future possibilities." Future possibilities. Those two words would explain nearly every terrible thing that happened over the next 4 months. I nodded once. "What kind of possibilities?" Daniel cleared his throat. "Well, eventually this house is going to become part of the family estate anyway." I stared at him. The family estate. It sounded like something lawyers said while charging by the hour. "This house," I said quietly, "is not an estate. It's my home." "Of course," Olivia said quickly. "Nobody's saying otherwise." But she did not unfold the paper. And Daniel did not put away his phone. And neither of them looked embarrassed enough for my comfort. That night I sat alone in my bedroom and looked at Robert's photograph on the dresser. He had been gone 6 years. 6 long quiet years. Before he died, he used to say the same thing over and over. "Patricia, never let people slowly turn your kindness into a contract." At the time, I thought he was talking about business. I later realized he had been talking about family. Olivia and Daniel had moved into my house 2 years earlier after Daniel's restaurant failed. "Just for a little while, Mom." That was how it always begins. A little while. Temporary. Until we recover. Until things stabilize. Until the kids finish school. Temporary arrangements have a way of unpacking themselves permanently into your life. At first it had been nice. The house felt alive again. Noah's laughter in the hallway. Family dinners. Noise in the mornings. I had missed noise. Widowhood is very quiet. People never explain that part properly. They tell you about grief. They tell you about loneliness. But nobody tells you how loud silence becomes after 40 years of marriage. So when Olivia asked if they could stay a while, I said yes before wisdom had time to speak. 2 years later, Daniel parked in my garage like it belonged to him. Olivia referred to the living room furniture as ours. And my grandson once asked me why I kept calling the guest room his parents' room when it was Mommy and Daddy's room. That sentence sat inside me for days. Not because Noah meant harm. Children simply repeat ownership as they hear it spoken. And somewhere along the line, ownership in this house had quietly shifted in conversation. Not legally. Not financially. But conversationally. Emotionally. Dangerously. 3 days after the measuring tape incident, I came home from my doctor's appointment and found Olivia sitting at the dining table with brochures. Retirement communities. I stood perfectly still. She looked up and froze. "Oh," she said. "Mom, this isn't what it looks like." I picked up the top brochure. Luxury senior living. Beautiful photographs of smiling gray-haired couples drinking tea beside ponds. How exactly, I asked, is this not what it looks like? Daniel walked in halfway through the sentence and stopped immediately. Again. Too quickly. Like a man walking into a meeting already in progress. Olivia pushed the brochures together nervously. We were just researching options for the future. The future where I'm alive or the future where I'm dead? Mom. No, Olivia. Which future? Her face tightened. You're being dramatic. No, I said softly. I am being included late. That landed harder than I expected. Daniel sat down carefully. Patricia, nobody's trying to upset you. Then why are you planning my exit strategy without me? Silence. Rain tapped against the windows again. I looked at the brochures. Independent living. Downsizing made easy. Estate transition assistance. Estate transition. There was that word again. Estate. Not mother. Not home. Estate. Olivia folded her arms. We're just trying to be practical. Practical. Another dangerous word. Practical people often become cruel in installments. We thought, Daniel said carefully, that eventually it might make sense to sell this house. I laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because sometimes shock exits the body sounding almost cheerful. This house? Well, it's large. It was built large because I raised 3 children in it. You don't need all this space anymore. There it was. Need. The mathematics of usefulness. Old people stop terrifying younger people once they stop needing things. Or once younger people decide they shouldn't. I sat down slowly. When exactly, I asked, did the two of you begin discussing selling my house? Another glance between them. That was answer enough. How long? Olivia exhaled. A few months. A few months. Mom, we weren't hiding. You were measuring bedrooms. Nobody spoke. I nodded slowly. Yes, I said. You were hiding it. That evening I called my attorney, Richard Bellamy. Robert and Richard had played golf together for 20 years. Richard answered on the second ring. Patricia. Richard, I need to ask you something unpleasant. That usually means family. Yes. A sigh. What happened? I told him everything. The measurements. The brochures. The conversations. The silence on the line afterward lasted several seconds. Then Richard asked quietly, whose names are on the deed? Mine alone. And the will? The house is divided equally among the children after my death. After, he repeated carefully. Yes. Patricia, he said, has anyone pressured you directly to leave? Not directly. The indirect kind is usually worse. I closed my eyes. I think they've started arranging my absence emotionally before arranging it legally. Richard was silent a moment. Then he said something I would think about for months afterward. The most dangerous family conflicts begin when gratitude quietly expires. I sat in the dark after the call ended. Downstairs I could hear Olivia laughing at television commercials. Daniel loading the dishwasher. Noah running down the hallway. Normal sounds. That was the strange part. Life continues sounding normal long after respect has quietly died. The next Sunday my son Michael visited. Unlike Olivia, Michael lived 3 states away and rarely involved himself in family arguments. He listened quietly while I explained everything. Then he asked only one question. Mom, are you happy living like this? I opened my mouth. And nothing came out. Because unhappy people often survive by staying too busy to answer honestly. Michael nodded slowly. That's what I thought. He stood and walked to the window. You know what Dad used to tell me? What? He used to say this house was the only thing in his life he ever truly owned free and clear. He loved this place. I smiled faintly. So did I. Michael turned toward me. Then why does it feel like you need permission to live in it now? That sentence hit me harder than all the brochures. Because it was true. I had begun moving carefully inside my own life. Avoiding conflict. Adjusting routines. Coming around. Always coming around. The breaking point arrived 2 weeks later. I came downstairs one morning and found contractors in my kitchen. Cabinet samples covered the counters. Olivia stood beside a man in work boots discussing wall removal. Wall removal. I stared at her. What is happening? She smiled nervously. Oh good, you're awake. We're just getting estimates for opening up the kitchen. Opening up the kitchen. The kitchen Robert had built by hand one summer while teaching our boys how to use tile cutters. The kitchen where my children learned multiplication tables. Birthday cakes. Christmas dinners. 40 years of life. Reduced to opening up. You hired contractors? Well, not officially yet. In my house. We were going to tell you. When? She hesitated. After we had numbers. Numbers. Always numbers. Never memories. I looked at the contractor. Please leave. He blinked awkwardly. Olivia flushed. Mom, don't embarrass me. Then stop inviting strangers to demolish my kitchen before asking permission. The contractor left quickly. Daniel came downstairs halfway through the argument. What's going on? I looked directly at him. You are moving out. The silence afterward was absolute. Olivia laughed once nervously. Mom, don't say things you don't mean. I mean it exactly. Daniel stared at me. You're serious? Yes. Over cabinets? No, I said quietly. Over ownership. Nobody spoke. I continued. For 2 years I have watched the two of you slowly behave less like guests and more like inheritors waiting impatiently for paperwork. Olivia's face hardened. That's unfair. No. Unfair was discussing retirement homes while I was upstairs folding your son's laundry. Daniel rubbed his forehead. Patricia, we've done a lot around here too. There it was. The invoice. Kindness always becomes accounting before resentment blooms fully. You have lived here rent-free for 2 years. We contribute. You consume. Olivia stepped forward angrily. We are family. Yes, I said. Which is exactly why this should have frightened you sooner. She stared at me. You'd really throw us out? I shook my head slowly. No. I would simply stop surrendering my life one room at a time. 3 days later Richard filed formal notice. 30 days. Olivia cried. Daniel became cold and quiet. The atmosphere in the house turned heavy. But underneath the tension was something surprising. Relief. For the first time in years, I stopped negotiating internally with my own discomfort. Noah adapted fastest. Children usually do. One evening he asked innocently, Grandma, are we moving because Mommy made you sad? Olivia snapped at him immediately. Noah. But I knelt beside him gently. Sometimes grown-ups forget how to share properly. He considered that carefully. Then nodded. Like it made perfect sense. Because honestly, it did. They moved out on a rainy Thursday morning in June. No screaming. No dramatic final confrontation. Just boxes. Suitcases. Tight faces. Daniel loaded the truck silently. Olivia avoided eye contact until the very end. Then she stood in the hallway near the front door. I really did think eventually this would become our house too. I looked at her calmly. Eventually is not the same thing as already. Tears filled her eyes. For a moment, I saw not an entitled woman, but simply a frightened daughter who had mistaken proximity for possession. "I'm sorry," she whispered. This time, finally, the apology arrived in the correct order. I nodded once. "I know." After they left, the silence returned. But it no longer sounded lonely. It sounded peaceful. I walked slowly through my house, touching familiar things. Robert's chair. The hallway frame with pencil marks measuring the children's heights. The kitchen counter with the burn mark from Thanksgiving 1998. My home. Still mine. That night I sat alone at the dining room table. No measuring tape. No brochures. No future possibilities. Just quiet. The honest kind. And for the first time in 2 years, I understood something clearly. There is a difference between sharing your home with family and slowly disappearing inside it.